What is the biggest anime trope out there? Is it crazy power-ups? Is it legendary fight sequences? Or maybe the power of friendship? Well, you're really close, but actually, the answer is daddy issues. If you want to be a top-tier anime character, apparently your dad needs to be either evil, dead, or just nowhere to be found. But who actually is the worst of the worst? Let's figure that out right now in this somewhat dark but also surprisingly relevant video. And just quickly before we jump into this video, I just want to say, even though I'm approaching this with a lot of humor, like obviously stuff in here is really dark, I just didn't want the video to get super depressing. So with that out of the way, let's get started. And who honestly better to look at first than the worst dad of the modern era, the #1 hero, Endeavor from My Hero Academia. This dude makes everyone's blood boil, and it's not just from his insane fire powers. He falls very perfectly in my dads with, and I use the term very loosely, good intentions category. But when I say that, I mean Enji here is the worst when it comes to exactly that. He doesn't try to be a bad father straight up, he just really sucks at it. He's a terrible narcissist with the sole desire to create the perfect offspring, a kid who will surpass him and reach even greater heights. He tried making that perfect kid 3 times and failed 3 times, eventually then succeeding with Shoto Todoroki. However, when it comes to pure firepower, his eldest child Toya also exceeds him as well. Now the problem here is that in theory, he does do what all dads hope and dream of. They want their kids to live a better life than they themselves did. Unfortunately, Endeavor here just got lost in the sauce a little bit too much and created a terribly unsafe family dynamic, abused his own children, and created a real supervillain in the process as well. However, unlike most of the dads we're going to talk about in this video, he actually does have somewhat of a path to redemption, unlike any My Hero parent who is way past the point of no return instead. So I guess good on you for taking the extra steps towards that plus ultra daddy award there. Also, fair warning, I am gonna say the word daddy a lot today, so strap in daddies, it's about to get intense. Now following up, we've got the ogre Yujiro Hanma, aka the worst dad from Baki the Grappler. Now, if you don't know Yujiro, he's basically an army of one person and the most powerful human being alive with a similar goal to Endeavor actually. He just wanted to have a child who could push him to his limits. And to do so, he killed his youngest son's Baki Hanma's mother, a woman who would also absolutely be on the list of worst moms if and when I do that. So screw you, Emi Akizawa, you're catching a little bit of stray today as well. But back to Yujiro himself, because he is just absolutely brutal, terrorizing everyone he sees, and in the oddest and weirdest turn of events, he watches and coaches Baki during his first time getting hot and heavy so he could just become a proper man. Like, that's just weird, man. But at least during the battle of father and son, he cooked him dinner while they smiled and laughed together, so I guess redemption achieved? Okay. Very much unlike the spineless coward Grisha Jaeger, because this man was a pawn in a massive game, ruining both of his children's entire lives. Well, all at the instruction of his youngest child, Eren Jaeger, through an awful and incredibly random, or perhaps incredibly cool and badass time travel gimmick introduced at the end of Attack on Titan, depending who you ask, I guess. He's bad in the sense that he put way too much pressure on Zeki, creating a monster, and then continued to do the exact same thing with his son Eren as well. But I guess he also did have good intentions, trying to liberate his own people and creating a safe world for his family, and I can't really blame him for that one, since Eren was the actual evil mastermind behind everything anyway. So God damn it, I do really hate time travel. It always gets really weird and wonky and makes things so complicated morally. But let's instead move on from bad dads with okay intentions to some truly evil dads. Because you knew that he was coming when you clicked on this video. It's the vile alchemist from Full Metal Alchemist, Shoal Tucker. We all know what he did, and if you don't, well, lucky you, I guess. Either plug your ears or get ready to be spoiled on a series that is now decades old at this this point. Basically, he violates the purity of life itself, stealing his wife and daughter's lives by combining them with animals to create some sick and twisted chimeras. Basically, a man-beast hybrid often featured in mythology. To put it simply, he's a straight-up psychopath, and I really hate him. Like, I hate you so much, you sick man. Like, thank God Scar took care of business before I could get my hands on you. Then we also have Dario Brando, Dio's daddy from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. That sounds so weird, okay. Well, he's basically your stereotypical, really rotten to the core man, an abusive alcoholic that creates an absolute demon of a child. He actually shares a lot in common with Gambino from Berserk in this sense as well. However, Gambino is significantly more violent and awful with how he treats Guts compared to Dario and Dio. It's actually to the point that Gambino crosses the boundary into types of content I can't even discuss on YouTube. When it comes to rotten and truly despicable people on this list, he does seem to take a big part of the cake. But this is focused on dad-specific issues. I mean, he causes Guts to go on a crusade of darkness and vengeance, and Dio gets adopted and plays rugby with his brother. It's a little bit different, you know what I mean? But there really is no worse person, I think, when it comes to physical abuse than Overhaul from My Hero. Like, this man literally destroyed and repaired Eddie, his adopted daughter, over and over and over again, constantly putting her within an inch of her own life just to create a drug that could be used and sold by the mafia. Dude, your mask is stupid, you're a rotten and poor excuse for a person, and you truly never got the pain and suffering that you really deserved, if we're being honest. So you did give us the best season of the anime, I guess, so props to you, Chisaki. And after this, I kind of need a bit of a break from the really toxic dads for a moment, so let's catch our breaths here and talk about one of the most important archetypes of baddie daddies, the absentee fathers. You know, the type of daddy who goes to get milk and cigarettes and just never comes back. The OG daddy issue daddy. So let's do this speedrun style, since really there's not much to say about all of them, since, well, they all just straight up abandoned their kids. First up, the infamous father of Ash Ketchum from Pokemon, and I'd love to show you a picture, but we don't even know what he looks like. Like, you set the bar pretty low, big man. Then we have Sasuke Uchiha, but that's okay because your brother killed your dad, so you never really learned how to be a parent properly yourself, I guess. Then we have Monkey D. Dragon from One Piece, who probably had some sort of awful upbringing as well, based on what we see from Garp in One Piece. It's kind of weird that you raised your son's best friend instead, though. We've also got Von Hohenheim from Full Metal, who is only partially a bad daddy because he does come back and completely helps save the world, though he pales in comparison to some of the other One Piece dads that I haven't talked about yet. But before we get to those, we also gotta talk about Jin Freaks in Hunter x Hunter, a man who literally told his son to screw off when he was on death's door. You probably will get better though if Hunter x Hunter ever actually finishes and gets to that point. Then we've also got Toji Zenin from Jujutsu Kaisen, who comes back to life solely to beat up his kid, only to then kill himself once he found out that he was raised properly. I kind of wonder if he knows that the kid he tried to kill went on to raise his kid. Like, what an odd twist of fate and events, I guess that was. But not quite as odd as Guild Arts Clive from Fairy Tail, who just sort of appears halfway through the story, does nothing at all, and then shows up in the final fight to defeat a character way too powerful for anyone else in the franchise, kind of coming in, taking him down, and then being out of here. Talk about a Deus Ex Machina type of character. Now, for all my non-English majors out there, that's a type of plot device, a Deus Ex Machina, used when there's really no other way for a character to get out of a sticky situation in the story, so someone, like some magical power, just sort of pops up out of nowhere and resolves the plot. But obviously, we've got to talk about the absentee daddy that the internet loves to hate on, Son Goku. Dragon Ball's best worst daddy of all time gets way too much hate. I mean, sure, he never really raised either of his kids, but half the time it was because he died saving their lives and the entire world or slash universe, I guess. Then in Dragon Ball Super, he's gone because he's training with gods to protect all of the universe, like Yikes, he's not around, but at least he has a reason. Shout out to Piccolo though, because we all know that you're Gohan's real dad anyways. And yes, we have now talked about a lot of really bad daddies so far, but the worst are sadly yet to come. Like, these daddies just get down right dirty and mean, just you wait. For example, there's the dynamic duo of downright rotten parents from One Piece, Kaido and Vinsmoke Judge. Because let's face it, I think Eiichiro Oda, the author of One Piece, really loves flexing on the rest of the world about how good of a dad he is by writing truly terrifying ones into his own story. Kaido abuses, starves, and imprisons Yamato for years of her life, and then there's also Judge, who just is rotten to his core. A tyrant type of king who abuses Sanji unlike anything I've really ever seen before. Like, the boy just wanted to do a ratatouille, Judge. Let the kid cook, for God's sake. Okay. Technically, Judge could also fit a little bit into my next little subset of bad dads, the dreaded scientists. Because sometimes apparently Big Papa just has to make a machine at all costs, and these are characters like Gendo Ikari from Neon Genesis Evangelion, Dr. Tenma from Astro Boy, and Dr. Franks from Darling in the Franxx. Also, I guess Dr. Wily from Mega Man, because he's got a bunch of anime. Now, science and innovation is all really that matters to these mad scientists. They'll throw lives away, genetically manufacturing children to their bidding, and throwing it all away when those creations aren't up to snuff of what they expected. It's kind of like being the firstborn child, but way worse. And then sometimes evil dads are just literal demons. One that comes to mind and towers over every other daddy on this list is the Demon King from Seven Deadly Sins. I mean, this divine being is the manifestation of evil itself, orchestrating an eternal war of chaos and damnation with the goddess, putting really all of their own children through agony and strife, but nobody has it worse than Melodias, as his whole purpose in life is to be another vessel for the Demon King after leading his army to victory, cursing his son to eternal life and eternal suffering, having to watch his own love die over and over and over again. Like, what a really cruel and honestly really lame move. Like, most dads would want their kids to find love and not punish them when they pull a literal angel. But normal demons can have kids as well, especially if they adopt them, which was the case for Doma in Demon Slayer. Now, getting slightly into manga spoilers for the series here, so feel free to skip ahead a little bit to avoid them if you're an anime-only fan. He basically runs a cult and normally just eats people. However, he took a particular liking to Kotoha Ashibara, who also turns out to be Inosuke's mother. Now, his actual dad, abusive and pretty bad, but Doma, his technically not adopted father, he is a real villain. He gaslights her, keeps her around like a pet basically, and then just murders her in cold blood the moment she steps out of line. And then he has the audacity to tell Inosuke all of this after forcing him to grow up without a family. It's a good thing that he ended up killing you, punk. Like, you're definitely not daddy material. Okay, who am I kidding? Look at this dude. Unfortunately, he is a daddy, I guess. Now, these dudes are all truly awful in some way, shape, or form, and while there are plenty of nightmarish fathers to talk about, let's take a break and actually talk about some good dads who are still unfortunately bad dads because they died and thus abandoned their children that way. Sorry, I mean, good people can be bad fathers as well, I guess.
Isn't that right, Gojo? Isn't that right?
Ooh, you've been a bad daddy to, Fushiguro as well, haven't you? Now, I'm talking about characters like Minato Namikaze from Naruto or Bardock from Dragon Ball. Like, they do good things, sacrificing their own lives in order to save their kids, but does that make them good? No, I mean, not at all. They screwed over their own kids, leaving them without any father figures at all. Meaning that some random old guys had to step up and raise their kids instead. Grandpa Gohan, Hiruzen, and Iruka Sensei, like, those are good dads to a degree, I would say. And I do know that one of you little punks is gonna try and call me out for saying that Goku was a good dad for a similar reason, but let me remind you, he actually was alive to raise his children for years, unlike these two who died before they could even ever speak. Another dead daddy, Kamina's father from Gurren Lagann. Great dad in the sense that without him, the entire plot of the show doesn't happen. Very bad dad in the sense that he left his son to explore a a dream and died the moment he stepped foot on the surface world himself. Which now sadly brings us back to the truly evil dads, because we have a few left and they are actually the worst of the worst in this video. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, a deadbeat dad from the West, Fire Lord Ozai. Now, in case you don't know, he's a bit of a weird case because on paper he could have been a really good dude, and for the most part he is okay, I guess, until he then burns half of his son's face off and sends him on a wild goose chase because he spoke back to him. You know, most parents would yell, give their kid a spank, I guess, or ground them, but not this guy. Like, no spanking from him. Him and Endeavor have something in common: pure firepower used on their own children. Thank God that your own brother is the cardinal saint of father figures, because you, Ozai, you're pretty cooked. And actually, while we're talking about royalty here, let's talk about Raza, the fourth Kazekage as well. This literal gold digger is the ruler of the land of wind and is the father of Gaara. Now, he could have been a good dad, but he instead prioritized his country over the mental health and well-being of his only son, a cursed child. But the problem here is that his son was a Chinchuriki, a person with a massive demon chakra spirit inside of him. Like, he didn't have a choice at all, man, and it was your job as the Kage to decide who received the tailed beast to begin with. Meaning that you did this and you chose to create a monster instead of step up and raising your son properly. Like, get bent, dude. Not a good daddy at all in my books. And yet both of those two can't even hold a candle to Sweyn, the Viking king from Vinland Saga. As long as it helps him keep the crown, this man will do anything and everything. It's really a plague and a sickness he has fallen to, almost like a parasite. It orchestrates him to do a bunch of truly malicious actions as a father. For one, pitting his two sons against each other, clearly favoring one of them so that only one would survive. That way, I guess the strongest will rise and take his place upon the throne. And even in death, he still haunts Canute as a spiritual image of power and destruction. So let me tell you, good fathers don't actually haunt their kids, Sweyn. And it's kind of funny in a tragic way, because the actual worst dad on this list is also a royal. Can you guess who it is? While he's doing that, let's instead talk for a moment about someone who isn't actually a royal, but who has way more money than any king out there. I'm talking about the former president of Kaiba Corporation, Gazuburo Kaiba from Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, he's actually a genuinely tragic case of a man who lost it all and then went to the ends of the earth to try and fix it. His son Noah fell ill, he put him in a machine, sort of forgot about him, and then adopted the far superior Seto Kaiba. And since kids, I guess, were buy one get one free, he even got Mokuba as well, so what a steal, I guess. Anyways, he then proceeds to push Seto to become the best of the best, raising him really harshly and ruthlessly, which was eventually his undoing, as Seto staged a coup and overthrew Gozaburo, taking over his company alongside the board of directors. So call this a riches to rags story for his own dad. But now we actually get to talk about the worst of the worst, a cutthroat monarch whose entire being revolves around being a bad father. In a way, the anti-goat Charles Z. Britannia from Code Geass. And if you don't know, this man embodies everything that we have talked about: King Sweyn, Yujiro Hanma, Raza, and Gozaburo, because all of their worst traits are combined to form the ultimate bad dad that is Charles Britannia. He's a Darwin believer through and through, thinking that only the strongest should survive, which, by the way, is wrong because it's survival of the fittest, not the strongest, but hey. So much so that he even puts his own kids through his twisted game of life. Being a king, a lot of his rotten beliefs come from witnessing death at the hands of power, the hands of all people striving to claim his throne. But to me, that's still no excuse whatsoever for being an absolutely foul and dastardly daddy. In his mind, you need to lack morals to gain true, unrelenting power. And when it comes to lacking morals, this man really is unbeatable. As long as it helps him kill God, then he will do it. it. Genocide, mass manipulation, and most importantly, being a really bad father, you name it, he'll do anything as long as it serves his greater purpose. Which is why in the end, you are absolutely the worst daddy in anime to ever do it, Charles. Congratulations. What a crazy achievement. And obviously what this proves is that many important characters in anime having bad dads are kind of part of their backstory. And I think what's gotten really clear at this point is that many anime characters have had terrible father figures, and I do wonder how important that fact was to all of their backstories. And how convenient, a video talking about just that, the backstories of all major shonen protagonists. So go ahead and give that one a click. I'm sure that daddy issues are a huge factor in how all of these anime heroes came out to be anyways. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching. I have said daddy way too much in this video. It feels very wrong. I mean, this entire video was very dark, but nonetheless, I guess interesting and relevant because it is one of the big anime tropes. And otherwise, I will stop rambling now. Please check this out if you're interested, and I will see you in the next one.